So there I was, Cadet Marcus Webb, standing in what could only be described as the galaxy's most expensive gymnasium, surrounded by creatures that looked like they'd been designed by a committee of horror movie directors who couldn't agree on a theme. Welcome to the Vortan Combat Academy, where apparently humans were about as common sense. The orientation hall was massive, built to accommodate species ranging from the size of a large dog to something that would make an elephant look portable. I'd squeezed myself between a floating gas cloud named Wisp and something that looked like an angry pile of rocks called Boulder. Yes, really. Apparently, when you have universal translators, creativity in naming goes right out the airlock. At the front of the hall stood Instructor Krell, and let me tell you, this guy was what you'd get if you asked a child to draw the scariest thing they could imagine, then gave it 4 arms and a bad attitude. He was roughly 8 feet tall, covered in scales that looked like they could deflect small arms fire, and had teeth that suggested his species' dental plan was absolutely terrible. "Welcome, cadets," Krell rumbled, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "You are the finest warriors from 500 systems. You are elite. You are deadly. You are armed." He pressed a button, and a holographic display lit up behind him, showing various weapons that looked like someone had given a plasma torch and a machine gun a very uncomfortable evening together. "Rule number 1 at this academy," Krell continued. "No species engages in barehanded combat. We are civilized. We are advanced. We use technology." I raised my hand. Krell's eyes, all 3 of them, focused on me with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just stepped in something unpleasant. "Yes, the human." "Marcus Webb, sir. Quick question. If we're also advanced and civilized, why do we need weapons at all? I mean, shouldn't we just be talking things out over coffee or whatever passes for coffee in our respective biologies?" The hall went quiet. Wisp made a sound like a tire deflating. Boulder somehow managed to look uncomfortable despite being, a rock. Krell's smile was not reassuring. "Because, Cadet Webb, the galaxy is full of dangers. Pirates, criminals, territories disputes, and sometimes species that think they're clever." "Right, but here's the thing," I said, because apparently survival instinct wasn't my strong suit. "You've got 4 arms, scales like armor plating, and claws that could open a can without a can opener. Wisp over here is literally a sentient cloud of corrosive gas. Boulder is a boulder. Why do you all need plasma rifles?" Krell descended from the platform, which was definitely a predator move. He stopped about 2 feet from me, close enough that I could smell something like burnt copper and old gym socks. "Let me guess, human. Your species fights barehanded?" "Sometimes, yeah. Boxing, wrestling, mixed martial arts. We've got a whole thing about it. Pay-per-view events, betting, merchandising. It's very lucrative." "How primitive," Krell said, and I could hear the capital P in that word. "Your species hits each other for entertainment?" "Well, when you say it like that, it sounds bad. But yeah, pretty much. Also for self-defense, exercise, and because sometimes Steve from accounting says something really stupid at the office party." Krell leaned back, all 4 arms crossed. "You soft primates got lucky with opposable thumbs and fire. Don't mistake fortune for capability. Here you will learn to fight properly, with weapons, like every other species with any sense." "Then why?" I asked, because I apparently had a death wish. "Were you armed when you came down here just now?" Krell's hand, all 4 of them, moved to the various weapons strapped to his belt. He paused, looked down, then back at me. "That's different." "Is it, though?" Orientation continued for another hour, but I'd already learned the most important lesson. The galaxy had spent so long being scared of each other that they'd forgotten how to throw a decent punch. Day 1 of actual classes, and I was starting to understand why humans weren't exactly rushing to join the Galactic Combat Academy. The theoretical combat classroom looked like a weapons convention had exploded inside a paranoid android's fever dream. Instructor Krell stood at the front, surrounded by enough holographic displays of weapons to make an arms dealer weep with joy. Our class consisted of about 30 cadets, each one more naturally dangerous than the last. "Today," Krell announced, "we discuss your natural advantages and how technology enhances them." First up was Vex, An insectoid who looked like a praying mantis had been hitting the gym and taking steroids. His arms, and he had 6 of them, ended in what could only be described as biological machetes. My species, Vex clicked proudly, his mandibles clacking, evolved as apex predators. Our blade arms can slice through steel. We require no weapons, yet we use them to be sporting. Sporting, I muttered. Sure. Next was Thumper, a crystalline being who looked like someone had carved a person out of a giant amethyst and then given it anxiety. My people communicate through sonic frequencies, Thumper chimed, her voice like wind chimes in a hurricane. We can shatter bone with a focused scream. Observe. She directed a pulse at a test dummy, which promptly exploded into component atoms. The class applauded. I'll admit it was impressive, though I couldn't help but notice she was also wearing what appeared to be a sonic amplifier that probably cost more than my entire student loan debt. Excellent demonstrations, Krell said. This is why we are the dominant species of the galaxy. Natural weapons plus technology equals unstoppable force. I raised my hand again. Krell's expression suggested he was regretting not having a no questions from humans policy. Yes, Webb? So, if everyone's got these amazing natural weapons, biological advantages, and evolutionary perfect killer status, why does everyone look like they're about to storm a fortress just to go get lunch? I gestured around the room. Every single cadet was armed. Vex had a plasma rifle strapped across his blade arms. Thumper wore enough sonic equipment to start her own concert tour. Even Wisp, the literal gas cloud, had some kind of containment suit bristling with energy weapons. It's protocol, Krell said. It's paranoia, I countered. Look, I'm just saying, back on Earth we've got animals that could tear us apart. Bears, tigers, sharks, that one goose that guards the park near my apartment. But we don't walk around in power armor to go grocery shopping. That's because humans are prey species, Vex clicked helpfully. Excuse me? Prey species? We're apex predators. You have no natural weapons, Vex pointed out. No armor, Thumper added. No venom, no claws, no exoskeleton, Boulder rumbled. You are soft, pink, squishy. Okay, first of all, I'm more of a tan color. Second, we hunted mammoths to extinction with pointy sticks. We domesticated wolves. We invented agriculture, civilization, and the internet. Not necessarily in that order or importance. We climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet that was actively trying to kill us, and we did it without plasma rifles. Krell pulled up another holographic display. This is the Great Peace Treaty of Cycle 7854. It established the rules for modern combat. Article 7, Section 3. All sanctioned combat must utilize approved technology. It prevents barbarism. I squinted at the treaty, specifically at the bottom where the signatures were. Hey, is that the logo for Galactic Arms Corporation? The treaty was witnessed by industry leaders, Krell said quickly. Witnessed or written by? That's classified. I bet it is, I said. Let me guess. Before this treaty, combat was getting too efficient, too quick, not enough repeat customers for replacement weapons? The room went very quiet. Wisp made a noise like someone sucking air through their teeth, which was impressive given the lack of teeth. Krell's scales did something that might have been blushing or might have been a threat display. The treaty ensures fairness and prevents species from using overwhelming natural advantages. Or, I suggested, it ensures that everyone has to buy expensive gear from the same 3 corporations that probably lobbied the Galactic Council. Just a theory. Cadet Webb, Krell said, his voice dropping to a register that made the floor vibrate. You will learn our ways or you will fail. We have centuries of combat doctrine. What does humanity have? Boxing gloves and a really good health insurance policy. Krell smiled, and it wasn't friendly. We shall see how far that gets you. Class continued with more demonstrations of natural weapons being enhanced by technology that seemed suspiciously expensive. I took notes, but mostly I was wondering how an entire galaxy had convinced itself that the solution to having dangerous bodies was to add more danger, then charge everyone for the privilege. The Academy Armory was less a storage facility and more a shrine to overcomplicated violence. I stood in line behind Thumper, who was being fitted with her 3rd sonic amplifier of the day, because apparently the first 2 didn't resonate with her frequency signature. Whatever that meant, The equipment technician was a nervous little alien named Pip, who had approximately 17 eyes scattered across a head that looked like someone had started making an octopus and given up halfway through. He scuttled back and forth on too many legs, checking data pads and muttering to himself. "Next," Pip squeaked, and I stepped forward. He looked at his data pad, then at me, then back at the data pad. Several of his eyes blinked independently, which was deeply unsettling. "You are human." "Last time I checked, yeah. We have never equipped a human before." He scuttled over to a storage unit and started pulling out gear. Standard combat helmet, assuming cranial structure permits. He handed me something that looked like a fishbowl had aggressive parents. I tried it on. It sat on my head like a hat 3 sizes too large, wobbling with every movement. "Yeah, this isn't going to work." Pip said, which in Universal Translator came across as deeply concerned. "Combat gloves, standard issue." The gloves had 7 fingers. I have 5. This was becoming a theme. "My species has a different skeletal structure," I explained. "How many appendages?" 2 arms, 2 legs, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Several of Pip's eyes widened. "Only 4 limbs? How do you maintain balance? How do you fight?" "Very carefully and with excellent health insurance." Pip scuttled away and returned with what appeared to be a plasma rifle designed for someone with 3 elbows. "Standard sidearm." I hefted it. The grip was wrong, the weight distribution was worse, and I was pretty sure the safety was located somewhere near what would be my spleen. "This is like 10,000 credits worth of equipment," I said, reading the price tag that someone had helpfully left on. "For 1 cadet, for training." "Yes, standard academy issue, discounted from retail." Pip seemed proud of this. "Back home, we train with gloves that cost about $40 and maybe some padding." All 17 of Pip's eyes focused on me at once. 40 credits? For combat equipment? That cannot provide adequate protection. It provides adequate protection from our primary training concern, accidentally breaking our sparring partner's face. "You train against each other on purpose without lethal weapons?" "It's called sparring, Pip. We've been doing it for thousands of years." Pip made a sound like a kettle boiling. "But what if someone gets hurt?" "Then we put ice on it and make fun of them later. It's very character building." The armory door hissed open, and of course Instructor Krell walked in because the universe hates me. "Problem with equipment, Cadet Webb?" "Just noticing that all this gear seems a bit excessive for training purposes." "We train as we fight," Krell said, "with proper equipment." "Or," I said, and I really should have stopped talking, "we could try training without all this expensive hardware. You know, basics first. Hand to hand. See what we're actually capable of." Krell's laugh sounded like an avalanche with a sense of humor. "Hand to hand? You wouldn't last 30 seconds against any species here. Want to bet?" The armory went silent. Even the automated inventory system seemed to stop beeping. Pip's eyes were so wide I worried they might fall out. "What did you say?" Krell asked quietly. I said, "Want to bet?" "You, me, no weapons. Just hand-to-hand combat, unless you're worried that without all your fancy gear you're not as dangerous as you think." Krell stepped closer, all 4 arms flexing. "You dare challenge me?" "I'm suggesting a demonstration. Educational purposes. Show the class what happens when you rely on natural advantages versus technology. You keep saying you don't need weapons, right? Prove it." I could see the calculation in Krell's eyes. He was a trained warrior, a decorated instructor with 4 arms, natural weapons, and about 300 pounds on me. In his mind, this was going to be the easiest way to put the uppity human in his place. 3 days, Krell said. Arena 5, full academy attendance. We will see how your primitive fighting style fares against real combat training. Looking forward to it, sir. Krell left and the armory erupted into chatter. Pip scuttled up to me, eyes full of concern. "Cadet Webb, do you have any idea what you have done?" "Probably something stupid," I admitted. "But here's the thing, Pip. That guy's been armored and armed his whole life. I'm betting he's forgotten how to throw a punch." "And you have not?" "Nope. Because where I come from, sometimes all you've got are your fists, your wits, and the absolute certainty that Steve from accounting really had it coming." News of the match spread through the academy faster than a rumor at a family reunion. By dinner time, I had a crowd following me to the training hall, which was less flattering, and more like being followed by vultures who'd already started dividing up your belongings. I'd claimed training room 7, the smallest one available, because I didn't need much space. Just some floor mats and room to move. The academy's training rooms were designed for species practicing with various weapons, so they were full of holographic targets, weapon racks, and tactical obstacles. I shoved all that stuff to the side and started with basics, jumping jacks. Within 5 minutes, I had an audience. Vex pressed his face against the observation window, mandibles clicking in confusion. "What is the human doing?" he asked Boulder, who'd also shown up. "Jumping," Boulder observed. "But why?" "Cardiovascular fitness," I called out. "Gotta get the heart rate up, blood flowing, muscles warm." I moved on to shadowboxing, throwing jabs and crosses at an imaginary opponent. The crowd grew. Thumper arrived, her crystalline form refracting the lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. "He is hitting the air," she chimed. "Has the human gone insane?" "It's called shadowboxing," I explained between combinations. "Practicing form, building muscle memory, improving speed and accuracy." "But there is nothing there," Vex pointed out. "Yeah, that's the point. You train against an imaginary opponent who never gets tired and always forces you to maintain perfect form." I dropped down for push-ups, 50 regular, then 50 diamond, then 50 wide grip. My arms were burning, which meant it was working. Pip scuttled into the observation area, carrying what appeared to be a datapad and several bags of what I assumed was alien popcorn. "Is he dying?" Pip asked the group. "Exercising," Boulder corrected. "Why does it look like dying?" "Because effective exercise kind of sucks," I grunted out. "No pain, no gain." "That is the worst philosophy I have ever heard," Thumper said. I moved on to burpees because I apparently hated myself. Then sprawls, then shrimping drills, which are exactly what they sound like and exactly as dignified as you'd imagine. "I do not understand," Vex clicked. "Where are his weapons, his enhancement gear, his tactical support systems?" "Don't need them," I said. "The human body is the weapon, you just have to know how to use it." Over the next 2 hours, I worked through various techniques, basic boxing combinations, wrestling shots and sprawls, judo throws using the training dummy, Muay Thai clinch work, Brazilian jiu-jitsu transitions. The crowd kept growing. By the end of day 1, half the academy was watching the crazy human roll around on the floor, throw himself at pads, and generally look like he was fighting invisible opponents in a very aggressive interpretive dance. Day 2, Pip showed up to my training session with what appeared to be enthusiasm and several of his friends. "Cadet Webb, I have been researching human combat sports." "Yeah? Find anything interesting?" "You have over 200 documented fighting systems. Boxing, wrestling, karate, kung fu, Krav Maga. Something called Jeet Kune Do. Another thing called Sambo. How does one species develop so many ways to hurt each other?" "Practice," I said. "Lots and lots of practice. When you're squishy and the planet wants you dead, you get creative." I worked through grappling drills, showing Pip how a smaller opponent can control a larger one using leverage, balance, and the fact that joints only bend certain ways regardless of how many arms you have. "This is horrifying," Pip squeaked. "You are deliberately putting yourself in positions where you could be injured. It's called building tolerance. You can't learn to take a hit without taking hits. You can't learn to escape a hold without being held." Thumper pressed closer to the glass. "But the pain. Do humans not feel pain?" "Oh, we feel it. We just don't let it stop us. There's a saying back home, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger." "That is definitely not medically accurate," Pip said. "Yeah, but it sounds cool." Day 3, and now I had the Academy's entire medical staff in the observation room, apparently on standby in case the human did something stupid like break his own bones for training purposes. I won't lie, I was sore. Human bodies aren't designed for 3 days of intensive training after months of space travel, but that was kind of the point. Krell had trained his whole life in this Academy system. He was comfortable, confident, and reliant on technology. I'd spent 3 days reminding my body what it felt like to fight without anything but skill and determination. Vex approached me after the session. Webb, I have been analyzing your techniques. Yeah? You are going to lose. Instructor Krell has 4 arms, 70 kilograms more mass, natural weapons, and decades of training. Probably, I agreed. But here's the thing, Vex. He's trained for war. I've trained for fighting. There's a difference. What difference? In war, you want distance, firepower, support. In a fight, you want to be close enough to feel your opponent's heartbeat. You want to know their balance, their rhythm, their tells. You want to make their advantages into disadvantages. Boulder rumbled thoughtfully. The human has a plan. The human has several plans plus a few ideas, and a general willingness to do things that look stupid until they work. Pip scuttled up with his datapad. The betting pools have you at 47 to 1 odds against. Only 47? I'm insulted. Put me down for 50 credits on myself. That is statistically inadvisable. Pip, my entire species history is statistically inadvisable. We invented deep-fried butter. We climbed mountains because they were there. We went to the moon on computers less powerful than your datapad. We don't do things because they're advisable. We do them because someone said we couldn't. The next day was fight day. I spent the morning doing light stretches, visualizing techniques, and trying not to think about the fact that I'd challenged an 8-foot-tall, 4-armed, naturally weaponized alien warrior to a fistfight. Pip found me in the ready room. Cadet Webb, it is not too late to withdraw. And miss this, come on, Pip. When else am I going to get a chance to test human combat techniques against an instructor who's forgotten more about fighting than I'll ever know? You could die. I could also get hit by a shuttle bus or choke on cafeteria food or get sucked out an airlock. Life's full of risks, buddy. Why are humans like this? Because someone has to be, Pip. Someone has to be the species that looks at the impossible and says, yeah, but what if we tried anyway? That's kind of our whole thing. Pip's eyes did something that might have been a smile. Then I suppose I should wish you luck. Thanks, I'm going to need it. Arena 5 was packed, which I really should have expected, but somehow didn't. Apparently watching the crazy human get demolished by Instructor Krell was the hottest ticket on the station. I walked out onto the mat to the sound of what I can only describe as polite, morbid curiosity. The arena was a standard combat circle, about 30 feet in diameter, with energy barriers to keep stray weapons fire from hitting the audience, which seemed excessive for hand-to-hand combat, but then again nobody here had apparently thrown a punch in recorded history. Krell was already waiting, and I'll give him credit. He'd actually shown up without weapons. Of course, he had 4 arms ending in claws that could probably pierce steel, scales that looked like natural body armor, and a size advantage that made me feel like I should have brought a stepladder. Academy Headmaster Torval, a dignified alien who looked like a mantis ray had achieved enlightenment, floated above the arena. This is a sanctioned demonstration match, Torval announced. No weapons as per Instructor Krell's specifications. Match continues until submission or unconsciousness. Medical teams are standing by. They're going to need them, Krell rumbled, all 4 arms flexing. Probably, I agreed. But maybe pack extra ice packs. The crowd murmured. I saw Pip in the front row, holding what appeared to be a sign with some kind of encouraging alien hieroglyphics. Next to him, Vex, Thumper, and Boulder had claimed prime seating. Combatants ready? Torval asked. I rolled my shoulders, bounced on my toes, and reminded myself that I'd done stupider things. Not many, but a few. Ready? Krell dropped into what I assumed was his combat stance. All 4 arms raised, weight forward, claws extended. It was intimidating as hell, which was probably the point. Ready. Begin. Krell moved first, because of course he did. He came in fast for a big guy, all 4 arms reaching to grab me in what I assumed was some kind of multi-limb grapple that would end with me regretting every life choice that led to this moment. I slipped left, letting his momentum carry him past me. Rule 1 of fighting someone bigger: don't be where they think you are. He spun, faster than I expected, and swung 2 arms in a wide arc. I ducked under, stepped in, and threw a quick jab to his ribs. My knuckles hit scales and it felt like punching a car door, but I saw him flinch. First strike to the human, someone in the crowd shouted. The betting must have intensified. Krell's expression shifted from confidence to attention. Good. Underestimating me was his first mistake. He came in again, this time more cautiously. 4 arms was an advantage in reach and grappling options, but it was also 4 limbs he had to keep track of. I'd spent 3 days studying how to deal with multiple angles of attack. He threw a combination, high, low, middle, somewhere else I couldn't track. I slipped, ducked, and stepped into the pocket, that dangerous space where most fighters don't want to be. Close enough to feel his breath, close enough that his arms were problems instead of solutions. I threw a hook to his floating ribs. Elbow strike to what I hoped was a nerve cluster. Knee to the thigh to test his base. Nothing was fight-ending, but everything was data. Where was he guarding? Where was he vulnerable? What made him react? Krell grabbed me with 2 arms, lifting me off the ground. This was bad. In grappling range with someone who had twice as many limbs meant I needed to think fast. I wrapped my legs around one of his arms, using my body weight to extend his elbow. Simultaneously, I grabbed another arm and pulled, creating a lever. Physics doesn't care how many arms you have. Joints still only bend one way. Krell grunted, surprised, and I felt his grip loosen. I slipped out, rolled, and came back to my feet. What was that? Krell demanded. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's what happens when humans decide that physics is the ultimate weapon. We circled. The crowd was silent now, riveted. This wasn't going how they expected. This wasn't going how Krell expected. He charged, and I realized he was getting frustrated. Frustrated meant sloppy. I timed it, stepped aside at the last second, and used his momentum against him with a basic hip throw. 700 pounds of alien warrior hit the mat hard enough to shake the arena. The crowd gasped. Pip was making a sound like a tea kettle. Krell rolled up, and now I saw anger in his eyes. You cannot win, human. I have strength, speed, natural weapons. Yeah, I said, breathing hard because throwing around aliens is exhausting. But you're fighting angry. And you're fighting with weapons you've spent your whole life protecting with technology. You've forgotten they're fragile. I moved in, feinted high, went low, swept his leg. As he fell, I transitioned to his back, wrapped my arm around his throat, locked in a rear naked choke and squeezed. Krell's 4 arms flailed, trying to reach me, but I'd positioned myself in the one place his limbs couldn't reach. Directly behind him, body compressed, leverage maximized. This is called a rear naked choke, I grunted. Cuts off blood flow to the brain. You've got about 5 seconds before you pass out. Tap if you want to quit. Krell struggled, his strength formidable, but strength means nothing without air and blood. I felt his movement slow, weaken. His hand tapped the mat. Once, twice. I released immediately, rolled away, and stood up. Winner, Cadet Webb, Torvald announced, sounding absolutely bewildered. The crowd erupted, though I couldn't tell if it was cheers or shock. Probably both. Krell lay on the mat for a moment, breathing hard, then sat up. He looked at me with all 3 eyes, and I saw something I didn't expect. Respect. How? He asked. Because humans have been fighting each other for fun, sport, and survival since we climbed down from trees. We've had thousands of years to figure out what works and what doesn't. And somewhere along the way, we learned that the best weapon is the one you're born with, properly trained. I offered him a hand. He stared at it, then took it with one of his 4. I helped him up. Maybe, Krell said slowly, we have forgotten something important. The Academy board meeting happened 2 days later. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Pip had helpfully hacked me access to the live stream because apparently even nervous, multi-eyed alien technicians appreciate good drama. Headmaster Torvald floated at the head of the table, surrounded by various department heads and instructors. Krell sat to his right, looking like someone who'd had his entire worldview challenged and wasn't quite sure how to feel about it. The demonstration match has created certain complications, Torvald began diplomatically. We have received 47 formal inquiries about the humans' fighting techniques. 12 species representatives want to know why their cadets aren't trained in similar methods. And the betting pool administrator wants to know if we can schedule a rematch. Absolutely not, Krell rumbled. Once was educational, twice would be showing off. The question before us, Torval continued, is whether we should integrate hand-to-hand combat into our curriculum. Instructor Krell, you've reviewed the situation. Your assessment. Krell stood, and even through the video feed he looked uncomfortable. For 3,000 cycles, this academy has taught that technology makes the warrior. We have believed that weapons are what separates civilized combat from barbarism. He paused. We may have been wrong, the board murmured. Someone dropped a datapad. The human demonstrated that most of us have forgotten how to fight without our equipment. We have natural weapons, yes, but we have not trained to use them effectively in close combat. We rely on distance, on firepower, on technology that can fail or be removed. The humans stripped away all of those advantages and showed us something we'd forgotten. Skill beats strength. Technique beats natural weapons. Training beats instinct. Are you suggesting, one board member said slowly, that we adopt human combat techniques? I'm suggesting we adopt the principle behind them. Hand-to-hand combat as a foundation. Understanding range, leverage, body mechanics. Then add technology as an enhancement, not a crutch. Torval's tentacles did something thoughtful. This would require significant curriculum changes. Yes, Krell agreed, and I believe Cadet Webb should teach it. You could have heard a pin drop in that boardroom. You could have heard a pin think about dropping. The human? Teach at this academy? Someone sputtered. He defeated me, Krell said simply. In front of the entire academy. Without weapons, without technology, using only technique developed by his species over thousands of years. If we are truly dedicated to creating the finest warriors in the galaxy, we need to learn what humanity learned. How to fight with nothing but yourself. The debate lasted another hour, but I could tell from Torval's posture that the decision was already made. 3 days later, I got an official notice. I'd been approved to teach an optional course called Foundational Combat Techniques. The first class had 60 students. The classroom only fit 40, so we moved to Arena 5. I stood in front of them, looking at the diverse collection of species who'd signed up to learn how to fight from the primitive human. Welcome, I said. I'm Cadet Webb, and I'm going to teach you something your species probably forgot a long time ago. How to throw a punch. Vex raised his blade arm. But Webb, I have natural weapons. Great. Now learn to use them without a plasma rifle as backup. Thumper, you can shatter bones with sound. Excellent. Now learn to do it when your sonic amplifier's battery dies. Boulder, you're made of living rock. Fantastic. Now learn to use that mass effectively instead of just standing there being imposing. I pulled up a holographic display showing various human combat sports. Boxing, wrestling, judo, MMA, karate, Muay Thai. These are systems developed by a species with no natural weapons, no armor, no built-in advantages. We're slow compared to most of you. We're weak compared to most of you. We're squishy and we break easily. But we learn to fight anyway, because that's what humans do. We adapt. We improve. We find a way. Pip scuttled forward. What is the first lesson? The first lesson is this. Every species in this galaxy has spent so long being afraid of each other that you've forgotten how to actually fight. You've got weapons, armor, technology, and you've convinced yourselves that's what makes you dangerous. I smiled. I'm here to teach you that you're dangerous all by yourselves. You just forgot. Over the next few weeks, word spread. My class grew. Instructors started sitting in. Even Torval attended one session, floating in the back, observing as I taught a crystalline being and a sentient gas cloud how to execute a proper hip throw. Krell became my unofficial assistant, which was hilarious considering he outranked me by about 17 pay grades. But he threw himself into learning human combat techniques with the enthusiasm of someone who'd discovered he'd been reading the manual upside down his whole life. One evening, after a particularly exhausting class, Krell and I sat in the empty arena, both of us sore and tired. Webb, he said, I have a question. Shoot. That first day during orientation, you asked why I was armed if I was so dangerous naturally. Yeah, I remember. You didn't have a good answer. I have one now, Krell said. We were armed because we were afraid. All of us. Every species in the Galactic Council. We became so powerful that we scared ourselves, so we made rules about weapons and technology and civilized combat. We convinced ourselves that the weapons made us safe. But they didn't, I said. No, they made us dependent. We forgot how to trust our own bodies, our own skills. We built an entire civilization on fear disguised as sophistication. I nodded. You know what the really funny part is? What? Humans invented most of those weapons you guys use. Krell's head swiveled so fast I heard his neck crack. What? Yeah, plasma rifles, energy shields, kinetic barriers, tactical combat suits. We developed or contributed to about 70% of the Galactic Arms Corporation's catalog. It's kind of our thing. We're really good at figuring out new ways to hurt each other from a distance. Then why do you still practice hand-to-hand combat? I shrugged. Because we also know that sometimes the gun jams, the power fails, the tech breaks down. And when that happens, you'd better know how to fight with what you've got. Also, honestly, because it's fun. There's something pure about testing yourself against another person with no tricks, no gimmicks, just skill and will. Krell was quiet for a long moment. We called you primitive. You did, I agreed. And maybe we are by some definitions. We're messy, emotional, contradictory. We invent weapons of mass destruction and then have fistfights over parking spaces. We're not consistent. But you're effective. Extremely. Because we never forgot the basics. You can't enhance what you don't understand. You can't improve what you've never learned. Every human fighter knows how to throw a punch before they pick up a weapon. It's foundational. Krell stood, stretching all four arms. The board approved a permanent addition to the curriculum. Starting next cycle, all cadets will take your course before they're allowed to touch a weapon. Really? Really? Turns out, when you defeat the head combat instructor in front of the entire academy, people pay attention to your teaching philosophy. He paused. Also, 15 species have requested that you visit their home worlds to teach their military forces. I'm still a cadet. Not anymore. Headmaster Torval approved your promotion to junior instructor. Congratulations. You're officially the galaxy's first human combat teacher. I sat there trying to process that. So let me get this straight. I came here to learn how to fight with fancy alien weapons, insulted the head instructor, challenged him to a fist fight, won, and now I'm teaching the entire galaxy how to throw a punch. That is an accurate summary, yes. Humans are going to love this story. Krell laughed, that avalanche sound that I was getting used to. Webb, I have learned something from you. What's that? That the question you asked, why was I armed if I was so dangerous, wasn't just about weapons. It was about confidence, about knowing yourself well enough that you don't need external validation of your capabilities. Deep thoughts from the guy who tried to crush me in a bear hug. I prefer to call it a learning experience. We walked out of the arena together and I thought about how weird the universe was. Here I was, a human from Earth, teaching aliens who could naturally do things I couldn't even imagine, how to fight like creatures with no natural advantages whatsoever. But that was kind of the point, wasn't it? Humans had spent our entire existence looking at our disadvantages and turning them into strengths. We're not the fastest, but we have endurance. We're not the strongest, but we have technique. We're not the most naturally armed, but we learn to use everything as a weapon, including our own bodies. The next morning, I stood in front of my first official class as a junior instructor. 120 cadets from 40 different species, all of them armed to the teeth with natural weapons, evolutionary advantages, and centuries of cultural superiority. Good morning, I said. Welcome to Foundational Combat Techniques. Before we start, I need you all to answer one question honestly. If you lost all your weapons, all your gear, all your technology right now, could you still fight? The silence was telling. That's what I thought. Don't worry. By the end of this course, the answer will be yes, because I'm going to teach you what my species learned when we had nothing but our fists and a whole lot of attitude, that the best weapon you will ever have is the one you can never lose. Yourself. Pip raised a manipulator. Instructor Webb. How long did it take humans to develop these techniques? About 10,000 years, give or take, but don't worry. We'll cover the highlights in just one semester. After all, we've got to speed up the process. Ain't have the galaxy thinking humans are the only ones who know how to properly throw down. Vex clicked his mandibles. We are going to learn to fight like humans? No, I corrected. You're going to learn to fight like yourselves, but better. Humans didn't invent fighting. We just forgot to stop practicing it when we got good at killing from a distance. There's a difference. I looked out at all of them. These deadly, dangerous, naturally armed species who'd somehow convinced themselves that they needed weapons to be warriors. You asked me once why humans fight barehanded, I said to the room. The answer is simple. Because someone has to remember that before we had weapons, before we had technology, before we had civilization, we had ourselves. And that was enough. It still is. Boulder rumbled. But we are not humans. No, you're not, I agreed. You're stronger, faster, more naturally dangerous than humans will ever be. Which means once you remember how to actually use those advantages without relying on a plasma rifle as a crutch, you're going to be absolutely terrifying. Now everyone pair up. Today we're learning how to fall without breaking. Because if you can't fall, you can't fight. And trust me, you're going to fall a lot. As the class began, I caught Krell watching from the observation deck. He gave me a nod. All four arms crossed, and what I'd learned was his version of approval. I'd come to the Galactic Combat Academy expecting to learn how to be a warrior by their standards. Instead, I'd taught them that maybe, just maybe, humans had figured out something important about fighting that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten in their rush to arm themselves with increasingly expensive technology. Sometimes the best weapon is the one you're born with. Sometimes the best armor is skill. And sometimes, when an instructor tells you that no species fights barehanded, the correct response is to ask them why they're so heavily armed if they're really that dangerous. The answer, I'd learned, was simple.